Okay, guys, tonight we have the usual format. We're going to go over grammar, punctuation, and usage in our first passage. And our second passage will strictly be reading comprehension. So without further ado, we'll get started. Maria Telkis, the Sun Queen. About 15 miles west of Boston, comma, a 1949 photo captures the image of two women in overcoats talking as they stood in front of a house in Dover, Massachusetts. So our first question is 14. Assuming that the capitalization and punctuation would be adjusted as needed, the best placement for the underlined portion would be, okay, about 15 minutes west of Boston, a 1949 photo. Oh, it sounds like the photo is west of Boston, right? Because something that modifies a noun, if the noun follows immediately after it, it sounds like the photo is 15 miles west of Boston. So what you want to do um, is put it after Massachusetts. Because what exactly is 15 miles west of Boston? Dover, Massachusetts. So what you want to do here is stick it right after Dover, Massachusetts, because it says about 15 miles west of Boston. Okay. So what's modifying Dover, Massachusetts is this phrase. The way it's constructed now, it sounds like the photo is 15 miles west of Boston, which is very confusing to the reader. So a 1949 photo captured the image of two women in overcoats talking as they stood in front of a house in Dover, Massachusetts, about 15 miles west of Boston. So the right answer to 16 would be J. 17, which of the following true statements, if added here, would provide the best introduction for the essay? So we know it's going to be put right here. The coats they wore indicated that the weather that day was not very warm. The two women, Dr. Maria Telkis and Eleanor Raymond, had designed it. Okay, they're referring back to the house. Okay. It was difficult to tell from the picture what time of day it was. One woman had lighter hair than the other. So irrelevant, irrelevant, irrelevant. So the house was designed by Maria Telkis and Eleanor Raymond. That's the whole point, is that they're designing, the whole point of the passage is that they're designing homes that can be heated and cooled with the sun alone. So you want to talk about the fact that they designed the house, because that's the whole topic of the essay. So if you want to stick something at 17, the right answer would be B, with A, C, and D being utterly irrelevant. Okay. The house heated from the sun when it was out and shining. Okay, when it was out and shining, of course. Is this not unnecessary and redundant? So this cannot be the right answer. So no change is clearly off the table. So what could be the right answer? Totally heated just from sunlight and that warmth. I mean, we know sunlight is warm. This is a joke. You don't need to say totally either. So again, full of all kinds of unnecessary words and redundancies. Using the sun's heat to heat the house. You're using heat twice. Come on, that you can do better than that. Heated only by the sun. There it is. That's the simplest and best substitute for this. The house, heated only by the sun, was the first of its kind, period. Okay, so the answer to 18 is J, heated only by the sun. 10 years earlier, dash, before the sun first warmed its chilly Dover home, dash, okay. This is a contraction. It is. It's not a possessive. Why is it not a possessive? Because it has an apostrophe. So ITS is a possessive without the apostrophe. But is that the right pronoun to put in there? 10 years earlier, before the sun first warmed its chilly Dover home. Does the home belong to the sun? No. So you do not want this, and what you want is that. C. C is the right answer to 19. Okay. C is that chilly Dover home. It's not the home that belongs to the sun. So this is incorrect. This is wrong because it means that is. This is wrong because it means it is. So the only right answer is that. 10 years earlier, before the sun warmed that chilly Dover home, and you see how it's separated off by dashes, which are symmetric, Telkis had been studying how to use the sun's energy, energy belonging to the sun, to produce clean drinking water from salt water. Telkis had been working with the Massachusetts Institute of Technology before World War II began, comma, and her reputation as a chemical engineer got the US government's attention. Okay, so the next question is 20. So we're making a statement about her in the context of the fact that the next sentence says the military hired her. So the fact that the government paid attention to her seems very closely related to the fact that the military hired her. So this is actually grammatically correct and it makes sense. Given that all of the choices are accurate, which one provides the most relevant information at this point? Well, the fact that she was noticed by the government and then subsequently got hired by the military is really a sequitur. One follows the other. Let's see what some of the other choices are. Eventually, she would develop other inventions. Irrelevant. She hopes to solve global hunger. Irrelevant. She had been interested since high school in how the sun's energy could be used, a detail that's totally unnecessary here. We already know that she's a solar engineer. Okay, so the only right answer is no change. She was noticed by the government and then hired by the government's military. The US military hired Telkis to design a water filtration system that could easily be used by sailors stranded at sea. Now, take a look at this. By sailors stranded at sea. What sailors? The ones that were stranded at sea. Do you need a comma here? Absolutely not. So that is not necessary in any way, okay? Stranded at sea modify sailors, and there's no need for a comma in between. So what we want for 21 is D, by sailors stranded at sea. Okay, so this is the correct answer. Get rid of the comma, and you got a perfectly fine sentence. Her solar still, a still is, you know, what you'd use to evaporate something, water out of something to purify it, right? Or evaporate something to get rid of particulate matter. People use it to make alcohol. Her solar still, comma, which removed the salt through vaporization instead of boiling. So you see how this is set off by commas. So this is a dependent clause, perfectly correct. Produced countless gallons of drinkable water and saved many lives. So produced, saved. Okay? Conjunction of and in the middle. Past tense simple, parallel construction. It makes perfect sense. But what are the other choices here for this particular answer? Having saved many lives, you're changing tenses, not good. Saving, changing tenses. Remember, you have past, simple past tense. Saving many lives would be okay. But it's not good parallel construction. You produced and you saved, right? If you put a comma here, you could say saving many lives. But with the and as a conjunction, you need to have that parallel verb tense structure. So the right answer here is no change. Okay. 23. Let's go down here. After the war, comma, Telkis went back to work at MIT on a much larger project, comma, a home heating system powered only by sunlight, period. Then in 1948, and this is perfectly okay to separate this out with commas, she began work with Eleanor Raymond, comma, an architect who was designing a home for a sculptor named Amelia Peabody. So you've got Raymond and Telkis designing a home for Peabody. Together, comma, the Telkis and Raymond blended. Do you need a comma here? This is a compound subject, but there's the verb, subject, verb. Why would you separate a subject and verb by a comma in the main sense? No. You don't need a comma here. Together is fine. To set it off with a comma is good. Together, comma, Telkes and Raymond blended form with function. So the right answer here to 23 is the answer that gets rid of that comma. Together, comma is correct. Telkes and Raymond blended. So C is the right answer here. Form with function. And the end result, home, dazzled architects and scientists alike. So result is a noun, and it can't modify a noun. You need an adjective here, right? The resulting home. The only thing here that is not either a verb or a subject is resulting. The resulting home. And in this case, this functions as an adjective. And the resulting home dazzled architects and scientists like. She got a lot of attention, right? People noticed her, right? So she became kind of a well-known figure in the field of engineering and architecture. Okay. Its design improved on top of traditional solar heating systems. Okay, this is important. These are all prepositional: above, upon, over. But common word usage requires, okay, when you improve upon something or on something, not above it or over it. So although upon can be, the duck sat upon the pond, it's perfectly correct to say improved upon something. It's not correct to say improved above something or improved over something. These prepositions don't go with improved, not in the English language. So on top is also locating it, but again, the only right answer is upon. Its design improved upon traditional solar heating systems by transferring heat from the air instead of from rocks and water. So they stopped the sentence right there and they put a capital. Is that correct? Is this a sentence by transferring heat from the air? No, it's not. It's a dependent clause, right? It has to be attached to a main sense. So its design improved upon traditional solar heating systems by transferring heat from the air. So no period, no capital. So let's look here. It should say systems by with no punctuation. Aha, 26 is J. Okay, it's all one sentence. And by starts a dependent clause. And the parentheses has no effect there, instead of from rocks or water. Okay, the heat activated a chemical compound trapped between an exterior glass wall and a series of metal walls. See this dash here? There's no symmetric dash on the other side, right? Do you need that dash too? No, you do not. It has no corresponding dash, and you're not setting this off from that. This is basically a preposition between something, between an exterior glass wall and a series of metal walls. So you don't need any punctuation here at all. So let's look at 27 and see what answer we get. Aha, between an exterior glass wall, no punctuation, and a series of metal walls, comma, which is correct, which served as the heating elements. Okay, so this again is a correct comma. This is an incorrect dash. This sentence should read straight through. The heat activated a chemical compound trapped between an exterior glass wall and a series of metal walls, comma, which served as the heating elements, meaning the metal walls. Okay, this system could withstand winter months and during hot summers work in reverse by drawing in and transferring the heat from inside to outside. So this system could withstand winter months, 28. Which choice most strongly emphasizes the difficult conditions the heating system could withstand? Obviously, the colder it is, the more difficult it is for a heating system to work. So which one of these choices gives you the sense of more intense cold, which is more difficult to heat? Bitter cold. When something is chilly or just cold, it's not bitter cold. That bitter adjective there modifies cold, so you understand the intensity of the cold. So watch the sentence now. This system could withstand bitter cold, and during hot summers, comma, work in reverse by drawing in and transferring heat from inside to outside. Now, This is perfectly fine. Heat from inside to outside. In other words, pull the heat out of the house so that you cool the house down in the summer. But look at all the choices they give you. The interior to the exterior or inside to the outside. The interior or inside to the exterior or outside. The interior inside to the exterior outside. Doesn't it seem like a lot of words that are totally unnecessary? Interior means inside, exterior means outside. These are all synonyms, they're all redundant. Inside to outside is perfectly fine. Simple, clean, and the answer is no change. Don't add verbiage that's unnecessary. It only weakens the structure of your sentence. Okay, the successes of her solar still and solar house did not mark the end of Telkis's career. She continued to find practical, innovative, and cost-effective ways to use the sun's energy. Perfectly good concluding sentence, right? Now, question 30. The writer is considering adding the following sentence to the essay. The Peabody home, remember the home they built for that the woman, Mrs. Peabody. The Peabody home became known as the solar house. So we know if we're going to stick this sentence somewhere, it's got to be in one of these paragraphs that's discussing the Peabody home, right? Because otherwise it's irrelevant. So let's go back and look at A, B, C, and D and find out where they're talking about the Peabody home. Okay. So here's A. Heated from the sun when it was outshining was the first of its kind. Heated only by the sun, it was the first of its kind. This is the Dover house. So the Peabody house is not mentioned in this paragraph. So A is wrong. Now we move on to B. B is right here. After the war, she went back to MIT on a much larger product, a home heating system powered only by sunlight. The Peabody house is nowhere in this, right? It doesn't, you don't know what the Peabody house is at this point, okay? So this would seem like a non sequitur. It would be totally out of place in B. Then in 1948, she began work with Ono Raymond, an architect who was designing a home for a sculptor named Amelia Peabody. Together, Telkis and Raymond blended form and function, and the resulting home dazzled architects and scientists alike. Aha! Here's C. So if you put the sentence there, it would say the Peabody house home became known as the solar house. So when you're dazzling people, you're getting their attention. So people know about it, right? So sticking it in C would make perfect sense because you just described Mrs. Peabody, the fact that they're building a house, the fact that people were dazzled. Oh, so it got to be known as the place of the house of the sun, or the sun house. So C is the correct answer to 30. That's where it fits best. C in paragraph 4. So the answer is H. Okay, guys. I hope you're getting better and better at this stuff. I think you probably are. If you're following the arguments that I make and you're watching the changes over and over again from week to week, after a while it becomes second nature. You start seeing it more easily. And it's just a matter of repetition of concepts, and also training your ear to know when something sounds right and when it sounds wrong. Okay, the next one is reading comprehension. Passage A is adapted from the article The Other Humans, Neanderthals Revealed by Stephen Hall, the National Geographic Society. Passage B is adapted from the editorial Fossils for All by the editors of the journal Scientific American, 2009. Passage A by Stephen Hall. One of the longest and most heated controversies in human evolution rages around the genetic relationship between Neanderthals and their European successors, which would be us, Homo sapiens. Did the modern humans sweeping out of Africa beginning some 60,000 years ago completely replace the Neanderthals? Or did they interbreed with them? In 1997, the latter hypothesis was dealt a powerful blow by geneticist Svante Pabo, then at the University of Munich, who used an arm bone from the original Neanderthal man to deliver it. He delivered a blow. In other words, he delivered a blow to the people that said that that humans interbred with Neanderthals. He showed evidence that directly contradicted that. That's what it means when they say delivered a blow to the people that thought that they interbred. Okay, because what he showed was Pablo and his colleagues were able to extract a tiny 378 letter snippet of mitochondrial DNA, a kind of short genetic appendix to the main text in each cell. So mitochondria are the energy producing organelles inside the cell, and they have their own genetic code, which is actually more consistent from generation to generation coming through the mother, right? Because the egg has the mother's mitochondria, okay? Just so you know that. But it's different from the genome itself. Mitochondria has its own DNA. It's located in the cytoplasm of the cell, and it essentially is transferred from mother to child unchanged. So you can the only thing that changes it is spontaneous mutation. There's no recombination going on. Okay, so let's see, 378 letter snippet of mitochondrial DNA, a kind of short genetic appendix to the main text in each cell from the 40,000-year-old specimen. So we took some Neanderthal DNA. When they read out the letters of the code, the sequence, they found that the specimen's DNA, the Neanderthal's DNA, differed from living humans, so much so to a degree suggesting that the Neanderthal and the modern human lineages had begun to diverge long before the modern human migration out of Africa. So basically, they were two different species, and they were not interbreeding, or their mitochondria would have been more similar. Thus, the two represent separate geographic and evolutionary branches splitting from a common ancestor. If there was any interbreeding when they encountered each other later, it was too rare to leave a trace of Neanderthal mitochondrial DNA in the cells of living people. Okay, so they were so genetically distinct that basically he was saying that the possibility of interbreeding was essentially ruled out, or they would have been more similar if they were interbreeding. Pabo's genetic bombshell seemed to confirm that Neanderthals were separate species. However, during this time of the biological transition, says Eric Trinkaus, a paleoanthropologist at Washington University in St. Louis, quote, the basic behavior of the two groups is pretty much the same, and any differences are likely to have been subtle. Trinkaus believes they indeed may have mated occasionally. He sees evidence of admixture, meaning a mixing, between Neanderthals and modern humans in certain fossils, such as a 24,500-year-old skeleton of a child discovered at the Portuguese site of Lagar Velho, and a 32,000-year-old skull from a cave called Muri in Romania. Now, here's the deal. You're looking at a skull or a bone that has some features of Homo sapiens, some features of Neanderthal. That's what he's saying. So the structure of the skeleton indicates that there's some genetic mixing between these two distinct species, or presumably distinct species. But if they can mate and produce a hybrid, it's very possible that they're very, very close to each other, right? Genetically. So, but you're gleaning this information by looking at bones. I mean, if a human being could mate with an alligator and create something in between the two, what would that skeleton look like? That's what he's saying. He said he found the skeleton that's kind of half Neanderthal and half human. That's what he's claiming. But Katerina Harvati disagrees. A researcher at the Max Planck Institute in Leipzig has used detailed 3D measurements of Neanderthal and early modern human fossils to predict exactly what a hybrid, a mix between the two, would look like. None of the fossils examined so far matches her predictions. So although this guy, Trinkaus, says that he thinks he has skeletons that show some hybrid between the two, between Neanderthal and Homo sapien, she's saying that, she's done computer modeling by looking at lots of skulls of both and lots of bones of both, and doing predictions of what the hybrid skeleton should look like. And none of the skeletons discovered so far look that way. So she's disagreeing with Trinkaus. The disagreement between Trinkaus and Harvati is hardly the first time that two respected paleoanthropologists have looked at the same set of bones and come up with mutually contradictory interpretations. They just don't agree. They're looking at the same evidence and they don't agree. Pondering and debating the meaning of fossil anatomy will always play a role in understanding Neanderthals. Now, what is the tone of this passage? Is the author partial to one scientist over another? Does he state his own opinion? Is he argumentative, or is he just reporting the facts? He's being very objective. He's just reporting the facts. This one said this one said that, this one said this for these reasons. But he doesn't weigh in himself on this. He doesn't give an opinion. He's just presenting it to you, and maybe you'll form an opinion, but he's trying to be a reporter and be objective. Okay, next passage by the editors of the Scientific American. Remember, editors, when they write an editorial, they have an opinion. They're not just doing an observational piece or a news story. This is from the editors. In June of 2009, the famed Lucy fossil arrived in New York City. The 3.2 million year old partial skeleton of Australopithecus afarensis could attract hundreds of thousands of visitors over the course of her 4-month engagement, part of a 6-year tour, I guess, of the world. Before this tour, Lucy had never been on public display outside of Ethiopia. One might expect scholars of human evolution to be delighted by the opportunity to share the discipline's crown jewel with so many members of the science-interested public. So, this was the most important fossil discovery probably of the history of paleontology. And you'd say, wow, this is great. The people are going to see it. Aha. But news reports announcing her New York debut included the same objections that aired when she first landed in the US, namely that the bones could sustain damage and that the tour takes a key specimen out of scientific circulation for too long. Indeed, some major museums turned the exhibit away in part for those reasons. So the scientists were saying, this is inappropriate. This skeleton is way too important to be transferring all over the world and running the risk of damaging it. Plus, when you put it in the museum and put it on display to the public, you're taking it out of circulation for serious scientists to study it. So it's bad for a couple of reasons. Now, at this point, the editorial doesn't really have an opinion yet. But let's move on. The objections reflect a larger problem of possessiveness in the field of human origins. Indeed, fossil hunters often block other scientists from studying their treasures, fearing assessments that could scoop or disagree with their own. In so doing, they're taking the science out of paleoanthropology. That is an opinion. Basically, the editors are saying, a lot of these scientists are very selfish. If they make a discovery, they won't share it because they're afraid that someone else will understand it better or disagree with their assessment and so on and so forth. But the editors are saying that's really taking the science out, because science is all about collaboration, sharing, and challenging ideas, coming up with the best solution as a group. Critics of such secrecy commonly point to the case of Ardipithecus ramidus, a 4.4 million year old human ancestor. This is a million years older than Lucy. Discovered by Tim White of the University of California, Berkeley. 15 years after White announced the first fossils of A. ramidus and touted the importance of this species for understanding human origins, access to the specimens remains highly restricted. So basically, White is being super selfish. He's protecting his fossil. He doesn't want anyone else to look at it, and therefore he's not sharing evidence that other scientists could use. It's very unscientific of him. White, for his part, has said that he published only an initial report and that normal practice is to limit access until publication of the full assessment. So he's making excuses. He has noted that the condition of the key specimen, a badly crushed skeleton, has slowed the release of the team's detailed report. So again, this is White's explanation for why he's kept this thing a secret for 15 years. And the reader can see that it's probably not valid. Just because it's crushed doesn't mean that other people can't look at it. And 15 years is long enough time to have a report. The scientists who unearth the remnants of humanity's past deserve first crack at describing and analyzing them. Okay, that's fair. But there should be clear limits on this period of exclusivity. That's an opinion. Otherwise, the self-correcting aspect of science is impeded. In other words, people disagreeing with each other and then trying to disprove each other's theories, prove each other's theories. Eventually, the best theory comes out through competition of ideas, what they call the marketplace of ideas. Outside researchers can neither reproduce the discovery team's findings nor test new hypotheses if they don't have access. So this is an opinion piece by the editorial board of Scientific American saying that, yeah, it's okay if you discover skeleton to keep it to yourself for a little while, but not for 15 years. I mean, there's got to be a limit, and you need to start sharing that evidence with the scientific community. So it's an opinion piece, okay? The main function of the question in lines 4 to 6, remember going back to the first passage now. Did the modern humans sweeping out of Africa beginning some 60,000 years ago completely replace Neanderthals, or did they interbreed with them? That's the essential question, okay? One of the longest and most heated controversies in human evolution is this question. Was there separation or interbreeding? So the main function of this rhetorical question is to reveal the data when Neanderthals and early modern humans became separate, to outline a debate that likely has been resolved, to suggest the reasons early modern humans eventually replaced Neanderthals, to present what Hall believes is one of the most heated controversies in the field of human evolution. Well, the prior sentence says heated controversy, and then he comes out with the statement, is it interbreeding or is it separation? So he's basically describing the heated controversy. So the right answer to 11 is D. 12. As it is used in line 25, the term genetic bombshell most nearly refers to Fabo and his team's innovative method of studying, finding that DNA from a Neanderthal specimen differs significantly from the DNA of living humans. That was the crux of it, right? That's the bombshell. Because the DNA is so different, they can't really be the same species, so they weren't interbreeding. That's what the DNA says. Suggestion that there's only a trace of Neanderthal mitochondrial DNA doesn't say that in there. It says that they're very different. Discovery that given many samples, Neanderthal DNA sometimes resembles, it doesn't say that. So the only right answer to 12 is G, that these two DNAs, the Neanderthal and the human, are so different, okay? It's, the chance of them being the same species and interbreeding is very, very low. That's the bombshell. Prior to that, people didn't really know. There were arguments on both sides, but this DNA evidence was a very strong indication that they probably were not the same species. A bombshell is something that shakes up the world, right? Okay, so 13. Harvati is described as using 3D measurements of Neanderthal and early modern human fossils primarily to develop a structure of what a hybrid would look like. Avoid having to use actual fossils. Predict what a fossil specimen that is a hybrid of the two would look like. There it is. B is the correct answer. C, determine whether the skeleton found in Lake Arvello is a Neanderthal. No, that's not what she was doing. She was trying to create basically a model of what a hybrid skeleton would look like, a mix between Neanderthal and Homo sapien. Create sketches of Neanderthals? No. Okay. So the right answer to 13 is B, prediction. Okay, 14. Passage B indicates that in terms of age, the Lucy fossil is, remember, Lucy's 3.2 million, and the other guy's fossil is 4.4 million. Ardipithecus ramidus, 4.4 million. Where's Lucy? 3.2 million. So this one is more than 1 million years older than Lucy. Passage B indicates that in terms of age, the Lucy fossil is the oldest fossil of a human ancestor. No. The oldest fossil of a human ancestor that has been found with the skull intact. Doesn't say that. Not as old as the fossils that have been found of A. ramidus. Yeah, it's not. It's 1 million years younger. Not as old as fossil remnants of a human ancestor that have been found in Romania. No, that's basically not true. because Romania doesn't come up anywhere in this, right? So H is the correct answer. Lucy is not as old as Aramittis. Okay, so 14 is H. 15, based on passage B, which of the following is a reason some major museums declined to be part of the tour of the Lucy exhibit? They felt that it was contrary to scientific interests. Frustration with the scientists' possessiveness, no, because they were sharing it. Reluctance to share Lucy with the scientific community, no. Anticipation of large crowds to see Lucy that would be hard to manage. Conviction that Lucy is more valuable being studied by scientists than being displayed on tour for tourists. D is the right answer. Remember, they explained that in the passage. It said there were a couple of reasons. Number one, you could break the fossil, and that would be a disaster. And number two, you're taking it out of circulation, so scientists can't study it. So some museums said for those two reasons, they weren't going to show the display. So 15D is the correct answer. 16, as it is used in lines 87, 88, the term period of exclusivity most nearly refers to, well, let's look at 87, 88. But there should be clear limits on this period of exclusivity. The scientists deserve first crack. In other words, they should have the fossil for a period of time without other people looking at it. They deserve that because they found it. But this period of exclusivity should end. So it's the time when the scientist keeps it to themselves. That's what the period of exclusivity is. Week, when a scientist has to decide whether to keep a major fossil. First month after a fossil find. Length of time, a scientist may restrict access to new fossil specimens. Yeah. It doesn't specify week or time, but it says some length of time. It should be that they stop the exclusivity, right? That they allow other scientists to look. J, duration of time a scientist is allowed to study fossil specimens unearthed by other. No. It's referring to a period of exclusivity refers to when a scientist discovers it himself or herself and can study it alone before they share the information. So the right answer is H to 16. 17. The main purpose of the fifth paragraph of passage B, 79 through 84. Okay, let's look at that and just remind ourselves. White, for his part, has said that he published only an initial report and that normal practice is to limit access until publication of a full assessment. But remember, it's 15 years. And he has noted that the condition of the skeleton was bad, and that caused some delays in his ability to publish a full report. That was his excuse. So let's see what the question is. The main purpose of this paragraph was to describe the condition of the fossils, present what White offered as justification for his actions. Yeah. B, White is making excuses. Well, the fossil's not in great shape. It was hard to study. You know what I mean? And I can't publish till I do a full study. Yeah, he's making excuses. So that's B. 17 is B. Okay. Provide a second example of possessiveness? No, they're just talking about White as an example. Outline paleoanthropologist's typical procedure? No. Nowhere in the passage does it say that White's behavior is typical. Actually, it's egregious. Which statement provides the most accurate comparison of the tone? Remember, the first one was just reporting. It was observational. It was not taking sides. The second one was an opinion strongly held. Hall is sentimental. Hall's the first passage. Hall is sentimental and fanciful. No, he's not. He's just reporting on what these different scientists have to say, what their data indicates. So he's not fanciful. So that's clearly wrong. Hall is objective, yeah, whereas the editors of the Scientific American are critical and concerned. Yeah, they're concerned. They're citing the fact that a lot of these paleoanthropologists are finding fossils and then hoarding them to themselves, and it's unscientific. So I think that's a good answer, right? Hall is disappointed and angry. No, it doesn't say. He's not. He's just reporting on what the other scientists say. Hall is sarcastic. No, he's not. He's just being observational and reporting. So basically, the only right answer is G. Hall is objective, but the editors are critical and concerned. They have a strong opinion. They're not happy with the behavior of some scientists. 19. The authors of both passages would most likely agree that the discussion of human origins would best be furthered through scientists' willingness to share fossils of human ancestors, and debate their meanings and significance with other experts. That's a great answer. A looks really good. Memorize the oldest research on Neanderthals. Nowhere is that mentioned. Explore new technologies for creating 3D measurements. Nowhere is that in the passage. Encourage the general public to attend showings of fossils and human ancestors. Maybe the opposite, right? Certainly doesn't say that. So the only thing that can be said is they would both agree, the editors of Scientific American and Hall, that sharing fossils and debating their meaning is the best part of science. Okay? So 19A is the right answer. 20. Compared to passage A's discussion of the fossil of the original Neanderthal man, passage B's discussion of the Lucy fossil can best be described as, okay, so the original Neanderthal man, they go into a lot of detail. Arm bone, extracting 378 letter snippet of mitochondria, DNA, from the 40,000-year-old specimen, reading out the letters of the code, showing the difference between Neanderthal and human DNA. So there's a lot of detail about what the original Neanderthal specimen was all about, what information it offered in this case. But then you go to Lucy. All we know about Lucy is that she's old. She's 3.2 million years old, and she's famous. It doesn't give you any specific details, does it? Famous Lucy arrives. She's 3.2 million years old. She attracted all these people. Lucy had never been out of Ethiopia. The scholars had mixed views about this. Some of them were very unhappy. So all you really know about Lucy is that she's 3.2 million years old and she's like a very rare and important specimen. But you don't get the detail that you get when you talk about Neanderthal man. You don't really know what the heck it is they learned from Lucy or what they did with her. So let's look at that. Compared to the passage A's discussion of Neanderthal man, passage B's discussion of Lucy can be described as more focused on outlining the details of the structure? No. More focused on providing a survey of the work of scientists? No. Less focused on describing the fossil's direct role in educating the public about paleoanthropology? Less focused on explaining the fossil's direct role in research relating to human origins and genetics? J is the right answer. Neanderthal man, they're very specific about what they did and how it contributes to the body of research regarding this big question on Neanderthals. But Lucy's discussion is just, oh, she's famous and she's 3.2 million years old, but it doesn't give you any detail on what the fossil provided, its role in research. Okay, so J is the correct answer for 20. Good. All right, guys, I hope you followed that and I hope you remember Lucy. So we're going to stop sharing now and we're going to pull up the vocabulary list, which is always fun. And we'll get started here. So, what is a Neanderthal?
An extinct species of humans from the Ice Age.
That's right. It's a hominid, which is basically a species very close to humans, which is now extinct, right? They're not around anymore. And why do they look different from modern humans? How do they look different?
Look shorter but stronger.
They're short, they're stout, they have a receding forehead. Our forehead is more vertical, theirs kind of slanted backwards. And also the brow, the skull bones over their eyes were very prominent. They stuck out. So if you looked at the skull of a Neanderthal, it looks different from a modern human skull. Okay. The other way you use this word, and this is a word my dad always used to use. He always used to say, don't act like a Neanderthal. It's kind of an insult. Basically, don't act like a primitive caveman. You know, be more intelligent. So you can use the expression scientifically to talk about Neanderthal man, or you can just call somebody a Neanderthal. You're basically saying that they're like primitive, like a caveman. Okay, a paleoanthropologist. What is a paleoanthropologist?
Someone who studies the origins and development of humans.
Yes, humans, right? They're basically looking at fossils. So a paleoanthropologist looks at human fossils to try to determine the origins of the human species and its development. Paleo, by the way, means ancient. Okay? So that's the key, is it's studying human fossils to draw conclusions about human development. Admixture. What's an admixture? What's the difference between a mixture and an admixture? Why do we use that word admixture?
The admixture is mixed in with something and is usually not that important.
Yeah, like if you're making a paint, a certain color paint, you could say it was red with a touch of yellow mixed in, an admixture of yellow. So it's something added, but in lesser amounts and you create a mix, but the admixture has an imbalance in it. One thing is more important than the other. Okay, so it's a little bit different than a mixture. Tout. What does it mean to tout something?
You attempt to sell something by pestering aggressively.
Yeah, you're kind of a show off, but in an obnoxious way. He was touting his medals. He was touting his prowess at fishing when he held up a chain of huge fish. You're kind of boasting, showing off, pushing people to think a certain way about you. And you can also tout wares to sell. He was touting his vacuums or his milkshake machines or whatever it is. But it's basically demonstrating by being super showy and kind of forcibly insisting that people look. Okay, emulate. What does it mean to emulate somebody?
To copy them.
Yeah, do you emulate people that you do not respect?
No.
No, you do not. You emulate people who you respect, people who you think well of, think highly of, people you think are talented. So many athletes have attempted to emulate Michael Jordan on the basketball court. No one has ever achieved that goal, but they're trying to match his achievements and trying to match his performance. They're emulating it. Okay. Enervate. Enervate is very different from emulate. What does it mean to enervate somebody?
To energize.
Actually, to weaken them, to drain the energy out of them, to take away their vitality. So you could say the COVID viral infection was enervating my grandmother, pulling all her vitality out of her body, weakening her, enervating her. Not energizing her, but enervating her. Okay? So that's a good word, enervate, and not a word that a lot of people know, but it's a good word to use. And we use it in medicine. We say, oh, this illness really enervated her, really weakened her. Okay. To enfranchise someone, this is very simple. When you enfranchise someone, what do you give them?
You give the right to vote.
The right to vote. So, I mean, the American women were enfranchised, around 1920 or 1918? I can't remember the exact date. But there was an amendment that basically gave women the right to vote. So it enfranchised them, gave them the franchise, which is the vote. Okay. Engender, to engender something. It's kind of a vague term, to engender something.
To cause or bring about.
Yeah, to give rise to something, to get the cause. But the problem is it can be anything. You can engender bad feelings. You can engender a situation that's unstable. You can engender, let's say, you can engender financial ruin. There's a lot of things you can cause or give rise to. Okay, so that word engender can be applied in many situations, and it is. You'll see it all the time in written language and speaking language too. Ephemeral. What does it mean when something is ephemeral?
Isn't it something that like doesn't last for a long period of time?
Yeah, exactly right. Something that's ephemeral is here today, gone tomorrow. It blows away on the wind. The mayfly, it hatches and the same day it dies. It's ephemeral. Okay, good job. Life itself is ephemeral, right? We're only here for a split second. The earth is 4 billion years old. The universe is 14 billion years old. Humans are what, 100,000 years old? That's nothing. An individual life is so short, it's almost not worth mentioning. That's ephemeral. Okay, epistolary, what does that mean?
Relating to the writing of letters.
Yeah, or in the form of letters. Have you guys ever read Frankenstein, the novel? It's an epistolary. The whole novel is just a series of letters. Basically written back and forth. So basically, there are a lot of novels out there that are just a series of letters. They tell a story through letters. They're called epistolaries. Or you can use it as an adjective, epistolary meaning related to the writing of letters. So we're going to talk about that word in our etymology section. So the two words today for etymology that we're going to do are ephemeral, which I find to be a beautiful word, ephemeral, and epistolary, which is very interesting as well. So let's look at ephemeral. It is from the Latin ephemera febris. Febris is F-E-B-R-I-S, ephemera. Take the L off. Ephemera febris. And what it was it was a medical term in Latin. And it meant a fever or an illness that lasted only one day. An ephemera. So if you had like a 24-hour bug, you were sick for a day and it was gone. And that's how the term was used in Latin. But the Latin people, the Romans, got it from the Greeks. And the word in Greek, ephemeris, did not specifically refer to medicine. It was much more general. It meant lasting for a day, ephemeris. Now, here's the interesting part. Cut it off at the ep, make the ep a prefix, and you get hemeral, right? Well, in Greek, hemore means day. Ep means on day, on the day, around the day. So the Greek hemore, day, became ephemeris, lasting for the day, became in the Latin ephemera, which referred to a disease that lasted for a day. Now, the modern usage doesn't really specify the length of time. It just means that something that comes and goes quickly. So you see how the word evolves in one direction and then another. But remember that part of the word hemeral means day in ancient Greek. So on the day or lasting a short period of time. The next one we're going to use is epistolary. And epistolary is Latin as well. From epistolarius, of or belonging to letters in the Latin. And in Latin, an epistola, without the RY, was a letter. But guess where the Latinos, not the Latinos, guess where the Romans got it? They got it from the Greeks, right? They got a lot of their stuff from the Greeks. And in Greek, epistole with an E at the end, E-P-I-S-T-O-L-E, in Greek means a message, a letter, a command, a statement, and it can either be oral, spoken, or written. So in the Latin, it's specifically a letter. But in the Greek, it's a communication which can be oral or written. And it doesn't have to be a letter. It could just be a command or statement. So again, it's evolving, right? Now, epi, we know, means to, toward, around. Stellein, S-T-E-L-L-E-I-N, in Greek, stellein, means to send. So around, to send. And what do you send? You send mail, you send a letter. So the verb stellein in Greek forms the root of this word, epistolary. And the prefix means to or around. And the evolution of this word from the ancient Greek became basically a message, letter, command, or statement, oral or written, to the Latin, which basically was a letter, epistola, to the Latin epistolarius, of or belonging to letters, and then epistolary, which is the modern version, which could be made up of letters or related to letters. Now, What word is related to epistolary? The word epistle, E-P-I-S-T-L-E. Who can tell me what an epistle is in the Bible? This has become a term very much associated with Christianity.
Paul's letters?
Yeah, the epistles of Paul, a letter from an apostle, which forms the canonical structure of the New Testament. Okay? Now, Paul was an apostle, and Luke, who wrote one of the four books, right? Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, one of the four Gospels. Luke was not an apostle. He was a disciple. So Paul was an apostle, and Luke was a disciple. Now, for extra credit, can you tell me the difference between an apostle and a disciple?
An apostle follows someone who like already died.
Well, actually, yeah, I mean, Paul saw Jesus after he had risen, after he had died and risen. So it kind of is true. But there's a more general distinction, and I never want you to forget it, because 99% of people, even avid Catholics, don't know the difference between an apostle and a disciple. And I'm going to tell you right now, and you'll never forget it. An apostle spreads the word. He sends the word out by traveling and preaching and sharing the word. An apostle is a messenger of the word of God, a messenger of Christianity. A disciple is a follower and a learner. He does not go out and spread the word, but he studies Jesus. He studies the Christian text. He's learning for himself, of himself, by himself. So understand, an apostle goes out into the world and shares the good word of Christianity and of Christ. A disciple studies Christ and studies Christianity, but is not a messenger to other people. Okay? You with me?
Yes.
Very, very important. So you could be a disciple without being an apostle, but you really cannot be an apostle without being a disciple. Because in order to spread the word, you have to learn it first, which means you were a disciple first, and then you became an apostle, just like Paul. Okay? And the epistles of Paul are some of the most beautiful writing in the New Testament. And they come after the first four Gospels. The book of Acts is the fifth book, which talks about the acts of the original 12 disciples and what they did. And then Paul's writings come into the text basically moves on, and a lot of the New Testament is Paul's writings, right? And that's all in the form of epistles, letters that he wrote to people who he had converted to Christianity, and then he had left them to go on to convert others, and he wanted to stay in touch with them and make sure they were following the true and proper Christian faith. So he would write these long, long letters, like his letter to the Corinthians, right? Telling them what the right thing is for Christianity and what the wrong thing is. It was a guide for the people he had already converted. Okay? All right, guys, thank you very, very much. And we will see you next Tuesday. And have a wonderful week. Learn lots. All right?
Thank you.
Bye, guys. Thank you.